Being the first Tuesday of the month, we have our special guest, Heather Rhoades of GardeningKnowHow.com, joining us tonight to answer all of your questions related to your gardening needs. It is so good to have you here this super, super hot day, Heather. How are you doing?
It is good, and it is so hot.
Oh, man. How
I have been traveling through West Virginia and Virginia where we have no electricity.
Oh, man. Tell me all about that. What's going on out there? First-hand report.
It's been bad. I mean, you come to appreciate the country you live in when you stop at 4 different exits and there is no gas. Because
holy
gas
smokes.
stations are they're not working.
Yeah, the gas needs the electric to work.
That's right. You don't realize how much you rely on electricity, and so
God, that's why we just have to repipe the lines with water and use solar, wind, and it is kind of frustrating, but so you had to wait in really long lines when you finally found a gas station. Yeah, tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so we've been going through, I'm going to visit my sister. I'm in Cleveland. My sister's in Virginia, so we've been traveling through West Virginia through these past couple days. And it has been really crazy. I mean, the radio stations are letting you know where ice is being delivered. You wouldn't think that would be like a big deal until you can't get it. And suddenly you need to know where you can find ice. You run out of gas. We're on a road trip, and you stop on an exit, and they're like, there's no gas. And you go to the next one. The exit we finally did find gas at, we had to go 3 different gas stations.
Boy.
The first 2 had actually run out of gas.
Wow.
Because that was the only place in the area you could get gas.
Were there a lot of people running out of gas in search of a gas station that was open with gas?
Yeah, because they just aren't there, and there's some. I haven't seen any price gouging, which is great. That's West Virginia. God bless you, or whatever bless you, because you could have gouged, and I haven't seen that yet. As a matter of fact, I've seen quite the opposite. I've seen gas stations who had a 30-gallon maximum. That was all you could get.
God, I can't imagine. I know around here anyway, we're used to being without power in the winter. That's kind of normal. And, it really isn't that bad because you always have extra blankets or something to use, and you could always put the things in your fridge and your freezer in the snow. But the summer, in these 110-plus degree temperatures, that does not sound fun at all.
Well, it's, a lot of the people here, that's what they're facing is, the electric goes out. It's been out since Friday. It's Tuesday now. And a lot of these people, they've been facing, several days without electric in, temperatures between 95 and 100.
Wow. Yikes. And so you've been out there helping your sister. Is she personally affected where she lives? Or?
She's okay now. She lost electric for a day, but she's all right. But just getting here was quite an education in our system in the United States. So I've always had a bug out bag myself, and I'm sure many of your listeners have. But if you don't have a bug out bag,
you know what? We actually have done some shows on that in the past, and I'm so glad you brought it up because it's been a while. Maybe we should talk about that, Heather.
So, we've had a bug out bag, and, and your vegetable garden helps with that. I mean, to tie it into the whole show.
Yeah.
You have food on premises growing that helps with that.
Okay, well, in regards to the show, of course, we're talking about growing food and such, so I'm assuming some of your homegrown food may be dehydrated or powdered or freeze-dried, or what do you have in your bug-out pack?
I do have dried beans from my garden in my bug-out bag because I had them on hand. It really brings to mind why we have to be aware of how to grow our own foods.
Absolutely.
driving through West Virginia, the past couple days has been really an education because the grocery stores are empty. The gas stations don't work. You don't know how long you're going to be in this situation. And I have thought that dealing with this West Virginia thing over the past couple days is, they've been wonderful. I have to say that, you know what, people in West Virginia and Virginia, polite, wonderful, lovely to each other during this crisis.
Yeah.
And I can't say that for the rest of the United States. I hope you'd all be like that, but these guys have been champions during, 5 days without electricity and 95 to 100 heat.
That's wonderful to see. It's kind of crazy how it takes a disaster to get people to working together in the community again. But now, as far as like the bug out bag, do you want to go through some things that we should all have, just in case? People say canned food, but canned food is way too heavy.
Yeah. Well, that was one thing. I did put a bug out bag together about a year ago for my house. And we have infants in the house, we have toddlers, we have children, and we have adults. So that's something else to take in mind. Mm-hmm. When I packed my bug out bag, first of all, you're not looking for like the end of the world scenarios that people think of a bug out bag. They're thinking, and on the same note, if you go look at the CDC, they have tongue in cheek told you how to survive a zombie invasion, which everybody laughs about. But the same things that you need to do to survive a zombie invasion are the same things you need to do to survive earthquakes, to survive forest fires, to survive tornadoes, to survive floods. And you know what? I don't care where you live in the United States, you're susceptible to one of those things. Yeah, I think the most important thing I've seen over the past couple of days is having cash on hand. And that is something I have in my bug out bag. Mm-hmm. And I also have a container that hides the cash I have in my bug out bag.
Okay.
So you need a couple $100 because every place we've gone, credit card machines don't work. We got a hotel last night, credit card machine didn't work. We got gas yesterday, credit card machine didn't work. And that's something you don't think about. It's something that's so ubiquitous in our society. You slide that plastic and it pays. Well, what if that doesn't work anymore? So definitely cash in the bag. Food for a couple days. Again, the place we stayed at last night, they got electricity back at 11 o'clock at night last night. And this morning they did have breakfast for us in the morning. But they were talking about how they were really tired of cooking on the grill. Mm-hmm. So you want to think about that when you put it in your bag. Do you have enough food for 3 days? Because, again, we went to the Walmart, and there was nothing on the shelves. Mm-hmm. Literally nothing on the shelves.
Wow. Okay.
You walk into a Walmart, and there is nothing. No milk, no juice, no anything. There's like 3 things on the shelves, and people are fighting over it. So think about that. So, powdered milk if you've got kids. Dried beans, dried meat, anything compact.
Dried fruit, nuts.
Dried fruit, yeah. Nuts.
Okay.
Those are things that are important. And like I said, this is they were without electricity for 4 days. That's it. We're not talking like crisis at this point in time. I was just walking into there after 4 days of not seeing it. A way to get water. So
you'll need to have traditionally I think a bug out bag, you need to be prepared for, say, a good 3 days.
Right.
So would that be about 3 gallons of water? In
my personal bug out bag, we actually went and bought a device that decontaminates water.
Oh, okay. You mean like a Berkey or?
This was a UV device. You can stick it into a bottle, like you would buy at a grocery store, one of the water bottles that you might buy at the grocery store. Stick it in there, and it would decontaminate that.
Okay.
Now, this is not for a situation where you're really deep into it. Again, we're talking about 3 days without water. You always have boil for if you want to go hardcore, if you think you might be in a situation where you're looking at longer than 3 or 4 days. You want to look at coal filtered systems.
Yeah, some charcoal and coffee filters and...
Right.
Okay.
Because, let's face it, keeping... in my household right now, we would have to hold water for 3 days for 7 people.
Boy, that's 21 gallons.
Yeah. That's just not feasible.
That'll be happy. Yeah, exactly.
A crank radio is also helpful. Again, when going through West Virginia and Virginia the past couple days, the radio DJs were saying, hey, the people who need this can't hear it, so pass it on.
Yeah. Crank flashlight, too.
And you know what? We have a crank radio, crank flashlight, and it also has a USB connection, so you can charge your cell phone.
Okay. Oh, yeah, one of the little solar panel things.
Yeah, or you can just do the crank to crank your...
Oh, okay.
All friends and family during this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be important. These are basic things, and people think like, oh, people who do that are just crazy. But I said, driving through West Virginia the past couple days, these are everyday people who have lost electricity for 5 days. And if you don't think that that's detrimental, you need to live in their shoes. It's been, like I said, 95, 100 degree temperatures.
So what about, do you ever pack any type of shelter or something that you could make into a shelter, like, say, tarps?
We in my bug-out bag, we do have a small tarp and plastic bags, because that's another way you can get water. If anybody doesn't know that, you can take a plastic bag and put leaves into it, close the plastic bag up, and the next morning the leaves will have expelled humidity. Same as we breathe out oxygen humidity when we breathe. Leaves do the same thing, and you'll have some water gathered at the bottom. Something like that is helpful. The U.S. government, I know everybody is not a big fan of them, but they do have a wonderful list of things you need. We talked about the CDC and their zombie campaign. Their zombie campaign is actually a really good list of things you need to have for your general emergencies.
Okay.
And if you have a garden, that makes it even better. That's one of the things that has been on my mind when we've been driving through West Virginia and Virginia was that for all these people who are reliant on grocery stores and the grocery stores fail, you got nothing. But if you have a vegetable garden, you got something.
Yeah, definitely. So, if you're at home, that's great. If you have to leave for some reason, a fire or whatever, I guess you could just pick everything that's right before you have to run. But, hey, we went through a half hour already. And, of course, this is, don't be. It's important information. And, I should do more shows on that just to kind of refresh and, because what if situations occur? I'm sure the people of Colorado or the people of Virginia and, all of these things we experience. So what about right here in Branson, that crazy tornado or Joplin, et cetera? These things do happen. So anyways, moving on. Heather, we have a question here, and I'll just read you the whole thing. It says, we have a terrible rodent problem out in the back where our garden is. They chewed through all 35, oh no, of my pea plants and 30 bean plants. I have 3 left. They chewed them off at the stem and leave them there to dry out and die. They don't even eat them. Also, they've been chewing up all my tomatoes, even the green ones. We got our plants protected with a bird netting, but they chewed right through that, those smart little boogers. She said they've tried blood meal and human hair, no results, and asked, if you have any solutions for that, and also asked if you know anything about the product called Shake Away. I guess it's fox urine pellets. Does that work?
What they sound like to have is raccoons. They are extremely destructive and extremely
raccoons.
wasteful. Yeah, raccoons. And they're very smart. So even if you put your netting over that sort of thing, they can figure out that. And I've had raccoons in my own garden, and what they'll do is they'll rip a tomato off the plant, and they'll take a bite, and they'll throw it. Raccoons are difficult to deal with because they are very smart animals.
Mm-hmm.
So, the fox urine may work short term, but it will not work for long term because they are so smart. Fencing is your best bet. Making sure when you put the bird netting over there that it's tied down at the bottom so they can't pull it up. I hate to say it, but it's kind of like dealing with a 2-year-old in your garden when you're dealing with raccoons.
Okay, she just messaged that it's definitely not raccoons, it's rats, that she's actually seen them.
Okay. I can do that too. Large rats can also be very intelligent. I don't know if many people know this, but large rats can be as intelligent as small dogs.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Those of you who love chihuahuas and poodles, rats can actually be as intelligent as those animals. So the same sort of thing happens where, they can figure out, you put a netting over it, they can figure out how to lift it. They're rather wasteful.
Yeah, she said they chewed right through the netting. I mean, is it time for her to resort to something maybe what I did in my previous garden with PVC and chicken wire?
I would definitely look at that. I think with today's, especially if you live in a somewhat suburban area, with their attitudes towards wildlife, I think most people need to start looking towards fencing and putting that around your garden. I think for something like rats, live traps, if you're not into actually killing them, live traps can be very effective. You do need to find out where you can put them after you trap them. I know where I live, we trap raccoons that may get into the garden. I cannot let them go anywhere. I have to get permission to release them in areas.
Okay, so she said she definitely doesn't want to kill them, but you know what? I heard rat stew's pretty good. You might want to try that. And she is they will, if you just put a short fence, they're going to climb over it. So I'll post some photos of my last garden, and it was literally just a cage, PVC chicken wire, so super cheap, super easy, and that, then they'll have to dig under to get in, which, is possible, but I think, I never had any problems like that, so I guess, we did talk about that on a previous show as well, though, on how to prevent, like, moles and groundhogs and such. So I guess if you put the chicken wire down in the dirt, at least 6 inches or so, that should prevent anything from going under it?
Yeah, that does help. I said raccoons and rats, you're dealing with some of the most intelligent fauna that could be coming into your garden.
Okay.
So that's one of the problems is they can actually puzzle things out. So human urine, I know everybody gets kind of squeamish about that, but going out and peeing in your garden in the middle of the night can help.
Somebody was just asking about menstrual blood.
That, yes and no. It's one of those things. we've talked about this with deer, and the same thing with raccoons and rats, is eventually they'll get used to it. So menstrual fluid will work for a short period of time. Urine will work for a short period of time. If you can change things up, that helps.
Someone else on the chat is mentioning sound waves.
Well, anything that sounds human will be helpful with deterring animals from your garden. Plants themselves have shown to appreciate things like music and certain types of music.
Mm-hmm.
What you're basically trying to create is an environment where the pest does not feel comfortable. And it's the same whether you're talking about raccoons, whether you're talking about deer, whether you're talking about rats, whether you're talking about moles, voles, possums, all those types of animals. You're trying to create an environment where they don't feel comfortable. As long as you're keeping them feeling uncomfortable, they don't come back.
Maybe just make sure the music has vocals in it so they think it's actual humans talking.
Yeah, it may be that. And, they might get used to that type of music, so maybe something a little harsher, something a little more melodical. You have to change it up.
So what about like grasshoppers and crickets? Is there anything that can be done to prevent them from eating the beautiful greenery?
Well, it's a lot like any other bug. They tend to attack plants that are weakened. So you need to make sure that they have fertilizer and water for, the plants have that. That'll make them strong plants to be able to resist the damage from crickets and grasshoppers. It really just depends on what sort of situation you're looking at.
Mm-hmm. I haven't experienced, they're not actually killing plants or anything, but when I go out there, I see a few, and then there's a hole on one of the leaves. And, I guess it's basically cosmetic damage, but at the same time, it's like one of those things. Do I just have to deal with it because I created a climate to attract these bugs, or is there a way to repel them entirely, safely?
If you have just a few, I would consider grasshoppers and locusts only become a serious issue if it's something that becomes a plague.
Okay, haven't had that yet.
And a lot of places in the United States don't see it anymore, and really in the world. But certainly, whether you're reading Little House on the Prairie or reading the Bible, there are documentations of where grasshoppers and locusts, which are related to grasshoppers, become an issue.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see that much anymore. I think for your home gardener, the damage you see from a grasshopper is going to be minimal. It's not going to be enough to warrant all-out war.
Okay.
If you're seeing a plague level infestation of grasshopper or locust, there's not going to be much you can do.
Yeah, so a little bit of damage here and there, it's okay. As long as your crops are healthy, they can beat it. Just don't give up, right?
Right.
Okay, all right. So a little bit is to be expected. Now, Heather, I remember last year, it was probably June or July, and I don't remember what the question was, but it had something to do with somebody's corn plants, which led you to talk about a sign that whatever this bugger infestation was, one of the signs was ants.
Oh,
do you remember that?
Aphids.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so if you see ants in your garden, that's a sign that you have aphids?
Yes, because ants use aphids like cows. The same way we milk cows for their milk, ants will milk aphids for their honeydew. And this is actually something that we hear a lot of questions about, because we'll get questions from people saying, "Oh, hey, my maple tree is dripping sap. It's not dripping sap. It's dripping honeydew, which is the excretions that aphids and scale, which is another similar pest, let off.
Okay.
So, a lot of times, we get people to say, oh, ants are killing my plants. Ants tend, I'm not saying 100% of the time, but tend not to be damaging to plants. You have bugs that are damaging to plants.
So the ants basically kill or they feed off of the bugs that are eating your plants?
Right. They milk the bugs that are eating your plants, just like we milk cows.
Mm-hmm.
They will actually cultivate herds. So if you see ants coming up and down your plants, with the exception of peonies, because they secrete their own sweet substance, which is what the ants are going after. But most plants, if you see ants coming up and down the plants, they're going to their herds of aphids to milk them for honeydew.
Okay, all right. Now, what kind of plants do aphids like to feed off of?
Everything.
Anything.
There's really not a plant I can think of that aphids don't love. Now, there are decoy plants you can plant in your garden. Nasturtiums are the big one.
Uh-huh.
You plant nasturtiums, and they'll attract the aphids away from your other plants. But the fact of the matter is that aphids are attracted to plants that are weakened. So if you are not watering as well as you should be, if you are not fertilizing as well as you should be, if your soil is on the poor side and your plants are having problems, that's going to be an aphid attractor.
Okay. All right. So where are we going to see these aphids? Are they going to be on the leaves, on the stalks, in the soil, at the roots? Where are we going to find them?
The most common places to see aphids, and they're very difficult to find individually. They're very, very tiny, very hard to see with the naked eye. But they do gather at the intersections on branches and leaves. So anywhere where two branches come together, anywhere where two leaves meet up with a stem, that's where they're going to gather the most. You're going to see it heaviest. They also gather on the underside of plants. Another way to tell is if it's a smaller plant, you can take a piece of paper, put it under the plant, and sort of shake the plant.
Oh.
And then pull the paper away, and if you see a whole bunch of little specks on the plant, on the paper, you probably have aphids or scale.
Okay, so they're tiny little things then.
They're teeny tiny, and some of them, they come in a variety of colors. That's, I think, on the site, we have red aphids on there. And people are like, well, mine aren't red. Well, they come in black, white, green, red, just like the song.
So they can kind of be kind of camouflage, especially the green ones, right?
Right. And it can be very difficult to see them because they are so tiny. Whether it be aphids or scale. And aphids and scale have a similar damage. They suck the energy right out of the leaves. So,
okay, now does neem oil work with aphids?
Oh, it works wonderfully with aphids.
Okay.
Because aphids and scale, both what they do is the way they produce that honeydew that allows the ants to be attracted to them is they basically take a little sucker and they poke it right into your plant and they suck out all the energy.
Oh, okay.
So when you use neem oil, the neem oil gets into the plant itself, starts circulating with their juices. When the aphid, starts sucking out that juice, it sucks in the neem oil as well, which causes it to stop feeding and starve to death.
So basically, once again, the neem oil will take care of all of these bugs that will destroy our gardens. What about diatomaceous earth? I mean, say if we see a bunch of ants, are we going to want to kill the ants? Are we going to want to let them feed and just wait for the neem oil to do its job?
Normally with ants, DE will work on ants, and the reason is it basically lacerates them so they bleed to death.
Okay.
But it won't fix the problem. I always tell people when you see scale, when you see aphids, what that means is not that you have scale and aphids. It means that your plant is weakened.
Huh.
These bugs will only attack plants that are weakened. So if you have a problem with these plants, that means that there's something wrong with the care of the plants in the first place.
So I guess the biggest problem this time of year would be lack of water?
Lack of water, lack of nutrients. I had the privilege here in Cleveland of speaking with, if there's anybody who likes watching Iron Stuff, I think it's Farmer John, guy comes on with the overalls, as one of the judges. I had the privilege of speaking with him, and he runs a farm up here in Cleveland, and he says, bugs have antennae for a reason. They're trying to find the weakest plants. And when you have strong plants, they're not going to find you. When you're weak, they're going to find you.
Okay, so, but what if you have, for instance, you take care of your garden, but none of your next-door neighbors do? Are you still at risk of absorbing some of their bugs?
There's always a risk of the bugs, but the healthier you keep your garden, the better off you are.
Okay, so even if you do have a little bit of, as we mentioned before, squash bugs or cucumber beetles or aphids or hornworms, one or two or a few is not going to destroy your plant, provided they're healthy.
So it's, if you make sure that you have the absolutely healthy plants, the healthier the plants you have are, the least likely you are to have a bug infestation.
So, Heather, let's talk about what you do to keep your plants healthy. People ask, what kind of fertilizer should I be using all the time? So what are your suggestions?
I would say that when it comes to fertilizer, what you should be doing is you should be having your soil tested on a yearly basis.
Okay.
Sending it in to either UMass or your local extension service and finding out what you need. Because I could tell you all day long that you need balanced fertilizer, that you need phosphorus-heavy fertilizer, but if your soil doesn't need that, it's going to be pointless. So.
Yeah. Okay, so test your soil, and I think you can bring in a soil sample to probably your local, what are they called?
Extension service. I used to tell people that, and then I found out from my own local extension service that they don't test soil.
Oh,
UMass,
okay.
University of Massachusetts, test soil.
Yeah,
it's $5
I remember you said one that we could mail it to. Is that the University of Massachusetts?
Right. It's $5 per sample. You mail it in, no big deal. If your local extension service does it, I just learned over the past several years that a lot of the local extension services no longer do it. I still encourage you to get your soil tested on a regular basis.
Okay.
So you know what's missing. Because, if you're planting squash all day long, it's like the only thing you have planted in your garden is squash, you're going to be nitrogen deficient.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't matter what you add to your soil, you're going to be nitrogen deficient. Squash love nitrogen.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you're planting peanuts, that's going to be adding nitrogen to your soil. So what you grow makes a difference. Just find out. Pay that $5 a year. How much effort is that to pay $5 a year to find out what your soil looks like for that year and what you need to add and how you need to treat it. And that'll make for healthy soil, which makes for healthy plants, which means that bugs don't bug it as much.
Okay.
I think everybody here who's listening has probably had the experience. They bring a plant in from outside who's been perfectly healthy outside, very happy outside. They bring it inside, and all of a sudden it winds up with white webs all over it, which is spider mites.
Okay. So once again, neem oil to the rescue.
Well, but you know what? They came inside, and the plant was not as happy inside as it was outside. So it sends out distress signals.
Yeah.
And those distress signals attract bugs. So, if you can avoid having your plant send out distress signals outside, you'll have less pests.
Okay, so as far as fertilizer or fertilizing in general, there isn't just, you need more of this or that. You have to test the soil first to see what you do need, because there's many options then, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could do a balanced fertilizer, 10-10-10, 20-20-20, 30-30-30, and that would cover your basics. But if you really want to take really good care of your plants, you need to find out what your soil really needs. And different plants need different things. Like I said, squash love nitrogen. Peas, beans, peanuts love putting nitrogen back into the soil.
Yeah, so that's why we would want to grow our squash with our beans and peas, right? Getting back to companion planting.
Right. And you want to keep that in mind when planting. If you had squash growing in a bed last year, you may not want to plant, more squash there this year. Or then this is again why, crop rotation is so important. It's not only a disease; it's what the plants take out of the soil. George Washington Carver saved the South with peanuts, because he figured out that cotton completely decimated the soil.
Yeah.
And peanuts, reinvigorated that same soil. You need to think about that in your own garden as well. And that helps to reduce the number of pests that you're going to see in your garden. People don't associate that. They say, well, I gave them fertilizer, and, you need to keep them healthy.
They probably just went to the store and bought some big name fertilizer that had a pretty picture on it.
Yeah, plants that are watered enough. It's kind of like our own bodies. When your own body is healthier, it's going to be less likely to develop a cold. When you eat the right foods, when you drink enough water, when you enjoy what you do, you're going to be less likely to develop a cold. Well, plants the same way. If they're getting enough water, if they're getting enough nutrients, they're going to be less likely to develop scale and aphids.
Heather, I know recently we talked about tobacco, growing tobacco and maybe good companions for it. Do you know of any good companions for tobacco plants?
I would imagine that tobacco has the same companion plants as tomatoes, as they are in the same family. And for tomatoes, marigolds are great companion plants. Garlic is a great companion plant. Nasturtium, basil, these are all great companion plants for tomatoes. And since tomatoes and tobacco are in the same family, I would imagine they would be similar.
Okay, and what about as far as me and my tobacco just haven't been doing well this year. I had starters twice and stuck them out there, and the next day they were gone. I used to know who was eating them because I would see hoof prints. This year I don't have that problem. There aren't necessarily hoof prints, maybe smaller little feet, which I don't know, maybe bunnies or something. But have you any idea what could be eating the super tiny little baby starters?
When it comes to super tiny baby starters, my first suspect is always snails and slugs.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, slugs and snails love tender, seedlings, tender leaves on plants. And if you're not seeing any hoof prints or I guess incriminating chewing, that would be my suspect. Larger plant or larger animals do get the same sort of buzz from tobacco that we do. So
Okay. Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I'm so sorry. I can't believe we're out of time already. We need to make this like a 4-hour show because I had a ton more questions, but I guess we'll have to wait till next month. Heather Rhoades is on the first Tuesday of every month, so thanks so much for tuning in with us tonight on SoulJourneysRadio.com.